The UK's tax burden hits a post-war high.
Small businesses say they're drowning in red tape.
Ministers claim they're pro-enterprise.
But more founders are moving abroad.
Rising costs, sluggish approvals.
And now, a growing question.
Is the British dream already broken?
Britain is at a crossroads. Taxes are the highest in a generation. Public services are crumbling and growth has flatlined. But what if it didn't have to be this way? What if we could look across the Atlantic to the country that has outpaced Europe because it has created a political culture that celebrates enterprise and personal ambition? So we came to Washington to find out what Britain is missing and how we can change the narrative.
This series is brought to you by the Institute of Economic Affairs in partnership with the Land of Opportunity.
The Land of Opportunity has come to visit Grover Norquist, a key thinker in American politics. He's the founder behind Americans for Tax Reform and the brainchild behind the Taxpayer Protection Pledge. Grover is opposed to almost all government regulation, so we came to speak to him about what is holding Britain back and what is allowing America to trailblaze forward.
At the moment, the UK is facing the highest tax burden since World War II. By contrast, you introduced the Taxpayers Protection Pledge, and you got 95% of all Republican Congress to sign up to this. So how much is a complicated tax system a barrier to growth and enterprise?
Taxation is a barrier to growth, to getting people hired, to increased incomes and wealth on a series of different levels. One, it reduces the amount of capital per worker if you have high taxes on savings and investment. It discourages people from working on Saturday or an extra hour if you have high marginal tax rates. And then if you combine that with welfare payments to people for not working, you end up pay people not to work and you punish them if they do. Fewer people work, fewer people invest, fewer people save for the future, and that slows economic growth.
Andrew, I want to talk about the VAT cliff edge that we currently have in the UK. So if a business has a turnover of higher than £90,000 a year, they have to start paying VAT. Now, I think that in the UK, we see taxation as a contribution, as something you should be proud of for the greater good, for public services. Whereas actually, if you are a small business owner and you're employing people, taxation should be seen as a barrier to growth. It's something that gets in the way of your momentum. So how do you feel that we could make that transition between, in the UK, seeing it as a way to serve your country, almost as a contribution, a societal contribution, to getting to the American way, where actually serving your country is more like employing people and creating that growth, creating enterprise, being a part of that ambitious story.
And that's the amazing thing about what Grover's done here with the Taxpayer Protection Pledge, is because it's clear that the political leaders here, or at least on one side of the aisle, understand that very key difference. Whereas coming back to Britain, you've got 26, or I think 30,000 businesses that are purposefully staying beneath the threshold so as not to grow by £1, because then they get penalised. So you've even got, I spoke to florists that are desperate to give a refund to a customer so that they can stay beneath the threshold. So it's obviously absolutely key. And I know on the point about the tax code, that in the UK we have the second largest tax code in the world, bigger than America. I think only second to India, which has got 1.5 billion people. So it's obviously no surprise we are where we are. And at the same time, this wave of deregulation, tax simplification, tax reform that's sweeping America in general, but also certain states, is producing clear benefits.
Yeah, and I think it's clear as well that this isn't just a fixable scenario by a couple of individual policies by an individual chancellor. This is much a cultural thing as it is a political thing. So in America, you have the drive to succeed, to take risks, to be a part of the American dream. We don't have that in Britain. And so how much do you think that the complicated tax system and the penalisation of success, how do you think that contributes to the fact that our fear of failure rate in the UK is 20% higher than comparable countries?
Well, that's first of all, it's true because we conducted that research recently in the report I did with Onward. But I think that a lot of it comes down, that entrepreneurial spirit is sapped by this legislation, this sort of approach to legislation and regulation on a continual basis. And I think when you contrast that with what Grover's shown us here, where the Taxpayer Protection Pledge came in, how popular it is, actually all you need to really do is empower people to keep more of their own money, to take more of their own risks, and government to get out of the way for those entrepreneurial spirits and that economic growth to be unleashed. And I think, was it Mississippi you said? Was it North Carolina that kicked this all off?
Yes, North Carolina was the first state. Well, there are several states that said we want to go to zero. And they said, well, we'll just move the sales tax on top of the income tax on top of the sales tax. Okay. So the income tax will disappear, but the sales tax will get very big. That's not popular because people don't really believe you're going to get rid of the income tax until you've been doing it for a while. Right. And they really do believe that you raise the sales tax. So that was never a popular way to get started or to do it. Instead, they shifted to where as revenue comes in above a certain spending level, the additional revenue goes into a tax cut. So the money you spend to get the rate down is revenue that you don't take.
Right, I'm with you.
Yeah, so you don't shift it onto a different tax. Total taxation goes down.
And you've got clear examples here of how you've done it well and not so well, right? So that's the sort of perfected model, as it were. If we were looking to replicate it back in Britain, that's how you'd do it.
One of the advantages we have with federalism, the 50 states, is they each have income taxes and sales taxes and property taxes and various laws and regulations, schools, and you can see some states work well, some work poorly. The states with no income tax have more investment, more jobs created, more people moving there. And because political power flows from how many congressional districts in a state, your electoral college votes, Florida and Texas will each add 4 congressmen at the end of this decade. Right. There'll be 8 more Republicans in Florida and Texas congressmen and fewer ones in New York and California. So the economic movement of people and resources also brings political clout.
Right, I'm with you.
Grover, you said a few times that certain policies are not popular, which is interesting because in the UK there's a feeling that whilst tax cuts are popular, because people obviously have a natural inclination to want to keep money in their pocket, when you explain to them that it means that there'll be a cut in public spending as an equivalent to that, it then becomes less popular. So do you think that before we start to address the taxation of a country, we need to first make people realise that the government as a whole, as a state, needs to reduce?
Yes, but I would also suggest that when there was polling data that said, would you be willing to raise taxes a little bit as part of a spending cut deal? And some people would say yes. But then if you asked, do you believe that if you raise taxes, that money would be used to pay down the deficit, or do you think they'd just spend it? They'd just spend it. So the Democrats' argument, if you let us raise taxes, we'll reduce the deficit, is believed by very few people. So do double check that things that you think, populism is things that people believe that are stupid because they're not true. We don't refer to reducing taxes as populist because that's just a good idea. Okay, populist is when you've got an idea that really doesn't work and yet people seem to be supportive of it. Always double check. Do people really believe that more government spending leads to more services? The polling in the United States has showed for quite some time that people would rather have less spending, lower taxes, and fewer services because, frankly, they don't think they're really getting services for all that lovely money. So I would, as you work these issues, poll them several times, several directions. Don't assume that the assertions of the left, which is people like government services, well, I suppose they would, but they're, in their mind, certain services. Do you want the kind of services that if you gave the government more money, the things they do? Well, no, because I know what they do. They give people welfare and all this other stuff. That's how politicians lose elections, when they're using one set of rhetoric, thinking people agree with them, and it turns out they're advertising for their opponent. When they say, I'm going to raise your taxes and spend it on services, they go, oh, no, that's a bad idea. Even though in conversation someone might say, oh, I'd like higher services, meaning I'd like better roads or something, but that every time I give them higher taxes, I don't get better roads.
So how do you think that, given that the attitudes of Americans to tax and the attitudes in Britain seem to be very different, how would you go about addressing how we bring tax cuts forward whilst making it clear to people that actually public services will be better in a pro-growth environment anyway?
I think, Grover, you might want to jump in there, but I think what they've done in North Carolina is the model that it feels like what Grover was saying about how you cut the spending with the revenue. That's the model where it's worked there. They've also got examples where it hasn't worked and you perhaps go too fast too quickly. But these, I think, southern states are on a bit of a trajectory, aren't they, of decreasing their taxes as the economy grows, as employment comes in, as migration comes in.
But we now have, after 12 years of work, 8 states with no income tax. We used to have 6 states with no income tax. 2 of them didn't tax wages, Tennessee and New Hampshire, but they did tax dividends and interest. So those are now they changed that and made it completely income tax free, 8 states. And then there were 8 states that had that had single rate taxes, flat rate taxes. Yeah. And 7 new ones in the last 5 years. So now 15 states have a single rate tax. And one of the ways you get people to be more wary of we'll raise taxes and we will make better benefits, services, is the left historically tries to hide who pays the taxes. In the United States, the income tax is fairly clear who pays it. You pay it, you can see the number and you know what that is. Your property tax, you get a bill every month and you know what it is for the year for your house. Sales taxes, I don't know how much I spend on sales taxes. It's something, but I never see the list of all your sales taxes that year added up in one place. The other way you hide taxes is corporate taxes, business taxes. When you tax a grocery store, the grocery store doesn't pay taxes. Consumers of the grocery store pay taxes. The grocery store collects taxes from people who come and buy apples and potatoes, and the price of apples and potatoes goes up when taxes go up. Yeah. But you also have the situation where if you took $1 million out of a small business, since in the United States about 70% of what a business spends is wages. So if you have $1 million less because the government's taxing it, what happens? You spend 70% less, $700,000 less on wages. So people will get lower wages or even see cuts in their wages, and there'll be fewer of them hired. So it's a direct tax on workers. It's a direct tax on consumers if prices go up, and you can raise your prices in the market, and you do, your consumers are paying for that. And then if you really damage the company with taxes, the value of the company goes down, and people's 401ks, IRAs, your pension saving, your individual savings for retirement is less valuable because it's less valuable because taxes have made it so. So investors, savers, consumers, and workers all pay the corporate income tax. There is no Mr. General Motors. Yeah. There's no Mr. Grocery Store who writes a check. Yeah. And Americans kind of understand that if you ask them in a poll, but then if you ask them, do you think it'd be okay if the big businesses paid for this? You go, yeah, sort of. Yeah. Do you believe that tax on big business will really be paid by the big business? Yeah. No. Yeah, exactly. So it's very interesting, but the more you can educate voters that when they say they're taxing the local store with a high property tax, you do know every time you walk into that store and buy something, you're paying that property tax. When you buy a car, you are paying the corporate income tax of the auto manufacturer.
Yeah.
As people get that, the Democrats say, I'll never raise, in the United States, I'll never raise taxes on anybody who earns less than $400,000 a year, and big businesses. Well, as Elon Musk said a little while ago, he said, I have $1 billion. If the government takes it, I don't have fewer houses or fewer clothes or anything. There's anything I would spend that money on because I've got so much capital accumulated. What happens is I don't invest that $1 billion in SpaceX or something, or Tesla or some other business. It goes to the government and they piss it away. I will invest it in something that will make more money. Governments don't invest, they spend. They take the money, they spend it, and it's gone. And then they have to come back next year and take another $1 billion away. If you visit Elon Musk after a year, he's got the $1 billion, if you didn't steal it, and now it's $1.5 billion, or, 1.1, whatever, over time. So it's actually simply the government deciding we will do the investing, not the individuals who created the wealth. And so you say, let's see, the people in the United States who have all the interesting money created it in their lifetimes. So they know something about taking one and making 10 out of it. You want to hand it to bureaucrats who have no idea how to take one and make 2 out of it. That's not what they do. You give them one, they'll spend it. And so you take from investment and hand it over and you consume it. So explaining to voters, and a lot of this is education, remember, taxes are paid by people, not companies, not businesses, not grocery stores, not, beauty parlors. You pay as a customer. You pay as a worker on lower wages. If that's said several hundred thousand times, you can take off the table one of the left's arguments. Well, it'll be free. It won't cost you anything because this corporation's going to pay for it. Or just rich people. Well, if you took $1 billion from Elon Musk and pissed it away in government spending, the billion would have been used to invest in various companies that do different things, that hire people and that invent stuff. And what you don't see is all the people who didn't get jobs because that $1 billion was taken away and destroyed. I mean, it's not like it's sitting somewhere in the government.
The interesting thing on that is as well, explaining to voters, I think actually who we really need to explain it to is our parliament. Because, I mean, if you look at the front bench at the moment of the government, I think there's one who had a job outside of politics, right? I think even in America, you've got a lot more people coming from the private sector into government or politics who sort of instinctively understand it in a way that the allocation of capital is better in the private sector than it is in the public. You instinctively understand that here, whereas I think in Westminster, I think Grove's point, by the way, about you can't tax business is really important because we've just elected a government who promised to not raise taxes on working people and then went about it via taxing business. But the truth of the matter is, like you said, it's either the customers that pay it, and if it's not the customers, it's the pension fund shareholders, and if it's not them, it's the employees.
But it's about framing, isn't it? Because number one, working people, who are they? We're not categories. It's you pay, regardless of whether you consider yourself a working person or a working class person or a business owner or whatever. Ultimately, someone pays, and it's always you. And so I think that the framing of taxation in the UK certainly needs to change.
Can I just ask on the other interesting point is the net migration into the states that have pursued this tax reform and low tax sort of pro-free enterprise policies. That migration is going to be productive migration and therefore produce economic benefits in itself, right? Is that been the case?
Yes, and there are 2 directions. People who come into the country and want to go on welfare move to California. If you come into the country and you want to work, you go to Texas. And so the voting patterns of migrants, of immigrants, are completely different. In California, they're Democrats. In Texas, they're more Republican. Because of the government and the laws and the rules. Now, to a certain extent, these people kind of know where they're going and why. So people who want to go and make a living move to Texas. People who want to get on welfare go to California. So California's full of people who don't want to work. And Texas is full of people who do want to work.
So you then get this compound benefit, essentially, which, and I guess at the moment we've got the total opposite, where we've got lots of people coming in to the country who are unproductive, and I think is it one millionaire every 45 minutes who is fleeing the UK, second only to China.
Yes, we've only just worked out that people with vast wealth are actually very mobile.
Yeah.
We assume they would leave.
And they're all going to jurisdictions that are accommodating.
Absolutely. But I think as well that it's not just simply an issue of simplifying the tax system. It needs to become an awful lot more transparent. And part of our campaign is that we're not necessarily just talking about individual policies by an individual chancellor in an individual government. We're talking about a culture of ambition and dynamism and risk-taking and innovation that is so apparent in America that we just don't have in Britain. So what does the American dream mean to you?
That you can do anything you want to do, that you can make your own decisions and go as far as you can, whatever skills you bring to it, whatever skills you accumulate, and there isn't somebody there to tell you you can't do this. That's as far as you can go. Or if you go further than that, we'll punish you by taxing you too much to make sure that you don't keep doing that. Don't start another restaurant, don't start another store. It's really one that flows from individual liberty and a desire to just be left alone. Now, some people want to be left alone and go become monks. That's okay. The American dream doesn't mean making money necessarily. It means doing what you want to do. Earn success. Earn success. Nobody feels good when they win the lottery. I mean, it's nice, I suppose, to have more money than not, but it doesn't increase their personal happiness. And everybody writes them letters saying, can I have some of that? Because they don't think you earned it. When people can look at what they've done and feel they've earned their success, that's the biggest correlation with happiness.
So, Andrew, I just want to finish with you. You're obviously a successful entrepreneur. What's the one thing that Grover has said that's really resonated with you on a personal level, but also professionally?
I mean, pretty much everything Grover said is exactly what we're starting this campaign for, which is a deep philosophical approach that it's the individual who is right to make decisions for their own life. It's the individuals and businesses made up of individuals that are the ones who should be allocating capital, not the government. And I think it's what's fascinating, not only about America, but also all the states that we've been speaking about with Grover, is that those states understand it, that the ones that are growing are the ones that enable individuals to pursue that dream, pursue that aspiration, and therefore the governments or the local governments at a state level support them in that endeavour, and it's producing clear benefits.
Andrew Grover, thank you very much.
Thank you, Grover.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was a super interesting conversation with Grover. I think the key learning for me was that prosperity has to be created by a culture, a political culture, not just a set of policies. And nothing embodies that better than the Centre for Advancing the American Dream, which is bang opposite the White House. The second learning I thought that was really interesting from Grover was North Carolina and how they went about their tax-cutting, pro-growth agenda a certain way that delivered results, and most importantly, an increase in tax receipts.